Hello, everyone. We're ready to begin our new unit. We are now on Unit 8, and we are going to talk about Europe in the early Middle Ages. Okay, so remember the Western, let me draw a picture. There's the Mediterranean Sea. Here's the Roman Empire, split in half. Here we've got the Eastern Roman Empire, now known as the Byzantine Empire. And the Western Roman Empire has collapsed. Now we're going to be talking about this part, this collapsed part of the old Roman Empire and how it changes and a whole new society rises up. Okay, that's what we're talking about. During the fall, society fell apart, the economy fell apart, politics fell apart, everything was done for. And we're going to talk about it's starting all over again from new. And these times are known as, well, we're going to talk about the years 500 to 1500, approximately 500 to 1500. These are known as the Middle Ages. And when we talk about society of the Middle Ages, we say medieval. Medieval is the Latin word for Middle Ages. So we'll talk about medieval society, medieval culture, medieval politics, medieval kingdoms, medieval empires. If you ever hear the word for the rest of your life, medieval, you're talking about approximately the years 500 to 1500 CE. Okay. All right. But first, we're going to talk about some geography. Hopefully, you guys have noticed a theme now that at the beginning of every unit, we talk about the geography of the area we're about to talk about. So let me open up a map. Map of Europe. Map of Europe. Okay, here we are. Gonna make that a little bigger. Okay, map of Europe. Europe is often called a peninsula of peninsulas. Why is that? That's really weird. Peninsula of peninsulas. Well, let me make it look smaller. You all know a peninsula is a small part of land that juts off the main part into the ocean. Well, look over here. Here's the main land, and Europe is a peninsula going out into the ocean. This is mainly what we call, this is Europe, and it's a peninsula. But if I erase all that, look at all the peninsulas on this up here. This is also part of Europe. Here's a peninsula. Here's a peninsula. Here's a peninsula. Here's a peninsula. So it's a peninsula of peninsulas. Okay. Peninsula of peninsulas. And I need to tell you the names of those peninsulas. Sorry, let me go back to that map. Scandinavian. This is the Scandinavian Peninsula. This one here, this is the Balkan Peninsula. This is the Italian Peninsula. And this is the Iberian Peninsula. You need to know those. The Italian one's easy because that's Italy. The Italian Peninsula. Spain and Portugal are the Iberian Peninsula. Finland, Sweden, and Norway are the Scandinavian Peninsula. And these are this one here, this is the Balkan Peninsula. And also, just for your knowledge, these countries that are on this peninsula are called the Balkans. If you ever hear anyone talking about the Balkans, they're talking about one of these countries here. I took a summer backpacking trip in the Balkans. My ancestors are from the Balkans. My dad owns a business in the Balkans. They're talking about some country on this peninsula here. Okay. The topography of Europe. What is topography? Topography is the physical features of land. Physical features, lakes, rivers, mountains, deserts, plains, plateaus, any of those things that you think of is called topography. Have you guys ever seen a map that was actually 3D, like a map that you could touch, and where there are mountains, it feels mountainous, and in the valleys, your finger goes down in it? Just in case you've ever seen one of those, that's a topography map. They make topography globes and topography maps. And that's where you can actually feel where the landscape is different. So in Europe, there are some important topographical things you need to know about. Sorry. Oh, that's not what I meant to do. Back to this. Let's make it a little bigger. Okay. Down here. Down here, we've got the Alps. This is a mountain range. Here, separating France from Spain, this is another mountain range called the Pyrenees. And over here, you've got the Urals, U-R-A-L-S, Ural Mountains. The Alps aren't really that big. I made them a little too big. They're more like that. And then the Urals come down this way. The Urals separate Asia from Europe. And the Alps go across southern Europe. And the Pyrenees separate France from Spain. I promise I will not make you actually draw these on a map. What you have to remember is the Pyrenees separate France from the Iberian Peninsula. The Alps run along southern Europe, and the Urals separate Europe from Asia. That's what you need to know. Now, got some rivers to talk about. We've got the Rhine River runs along here. That's the Rhine River. And the Danube River runs along here. During the time of the Roman Empire, the Rhine marked the far border of the the border of the Roman Empire, and the Danube marked the border. And I'm having this terrifying thing right now that I'm telling you the wrong place for the Rhine River. Nope. Okay, I'm right. I don't know what was going on with me, but we're okay. Just remember, the Rhine River marked the Rhine, and the Danube marked the border of the Roman Empire. We're talking about a time that the Roman Empire has already collapsed. Just remember that when the Roman Empire was going, those rivers were the border. Now, Northern Europe, let's go back up here. Northern Europe is this whole area up here is one big plain, flat, open plain, no mountains, just prairie land for as far as you can see. And when people were traveling from east to west, they often came up here and walked this way because there weren't any mountains they had to go over. And then we talk about weather. Most wind in Europe comes from the west. They're called westerly winds. And they bring warm winds off the Atlantic Ocean. This is the Atlantic Ocean. And so most of Europe has fairly mild temperatures all the time. Like for these people that live in France, cold days for them is like what we would consider a spring day here. They don't even know what cold is compared to what we have here in Kazakhstan. In most of Western Europe is fairly mild all the time. It never gets really, really hot. It never gets really, really cold. It just pretty much stays the same. But the Alps that go like this, they block the wind from getting over here. I know it sounds funny, but let me draw a picture. When a mountain is like this and the wind is coming like this, oh, it hits the mountain, can't go any further. So the wind comes, the wind comes like this, hits the mountains and doesn't come here. So it doesn't bring that damp, moist air over. So this part of Europe is dry. They have dry summers, and they have mild, dry winters and hot, dry summers. Okay, that's everything you need to learn about geography. Now, let's start talking about new kings and kingdoms. Remember, when Western Europe fell, and it was invaded by all these different kind of people. All these different people were setting up their own little kingdoms. So like, here's the sea again, the Mediterranean Sea. Here's where the Roman Empire was. That's a pretty rough drawing, sorry. But all of this used to be one empire. But now you've got a group here that's set up their kingdom, and a group here that's set up a kingdom, and a group here that's set up a kingdom, and so on and so on and so on, all the way around. You've got all these different kingdoms, and they're always bickering and fighting with each other. Yeah, because they're always trying to make their kingdom bigger. They're trying to take over their neighbor's land to make theirs bigger and stronger. So some of the big ones that turned out, some of the big new kingdoms were the Huns and various Germanic tribes. Some of those Germanic tribes were the Lombards. They settled in river valleys and also Italy. And the Anglos, the Saxons, and the Jutes, these three all settled in the British Isles. What are the British Isles? Means islands. Do you see these islands here? This is an island and this is an island. So we had the Anglos, the Saxons, and the Jutes settled here. And let me erase some of this for you. The Anglos, the Saxons, and the Jutes settled up here, and the Lombards settled mostly in here. And once again, all these kingdoms were constantly at war with each other. They were constantly fighting each other. In the year 486 CE, this Frankish leader, the Franks were another group. You know, we have the Goths and the Anglos and the Saxons and the Jutes and the Franks. And there were more of them. These are all Germanic tribes, all the people that the Romans had just called Germans. The Romans didn't care anything about these names at all. They just called all these people Germans, but they really were different tribes. And one of them, the Franks, in 486, a Frankish leader named Clovis the First defeated the very last remaining Roman army. This was the last of the Roman people that were fighting for Rome. He defeated them. Now Rome is 100% completely gone. There's no one left of the Roman Empire. That Western Rome, have to be clear, there's no one left of the Western Roman Empire. He also conquered lots of other Germanic kingdoms. So he took control of he took control of all of this land. Now, remember, at the time, there was no such thing as France, and there was no such thing as Germany. It was just land. At the time, this was called Gaul. He took control of all of this. And while he was a strong, powerful leader, and his kingdom kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, his government was not very good. And eventually, it all broke up once again into little warring kingdoms, and everybody's fighting again. Let me go ahead and erase that so I'm ready the next time. Okay, so then it was quite a long time before things were unified again. In 717 CE, another Frankish leader named Charles Martel. His name was Charles Martel, but he's better known as Charles the Hammer. That's what people called him. Charles the Hammer took control of all Frankish land. So all Frankish land, any land that was controlled by any Frank, he wiped out all their leaders and took control of all of it. And he also took control of some land that Muslims were controlling. What, Mrs. Gibbons? What are you talking about? Muslims in Western Europe? Huh? Okay, let me show you. So this is where the Muslims are from. And they took over. They came through Egypt, came through Libya, came through Algeria, came through Morocco, and came up here. And Muslims took control of Spain. Portugal didn't exist yet. Spain didn't exist yet. It wasn't called Spain, but took control of this land. Then they started pushing up this way, trying to take control of Western Europe. Well, there was a very famous battle called the Battle of Tours in the year 732 CE, where Charles the Hammer defeated a Muslim army that had come up through Spain and was invading. And he pushed the Muslims back into Spain, and they stayed there. They stayed in Spain, but they didn't get any further out into Europe anymore. Now, we're going to fast forward to the year 786 CE, and Charles the Hammer's grandson, whose name is also Charles, we call him Charles the Great, yet he is better known by his French name, Charlemagne. If you ever hear anyone talk about Charles the Great and you hear somebody say Charlemagne, same person. Don't be confused. Charles the Great is Charlemagne. Charlemagne is Charles the Great. And he, in 786, he became king of the Franks. Remember, his grandfather had unified all the Frankish lands. So now he's king of the Franks. But he wasn't satisfied with that, and he wanted to make his kingdom bigger and bigger and bigger. By the year 800 CE, he had a huge empire that spread all across Gaul, Germany, and Italy. Let's go back to the map. He now controls all of this. It wasn't all of Italy, but it was quite a bit of it. All of this is now under Charlemagne's rule. During his rule, he ruled for 46 years. He was seen as a really strong, powerful ruler that just kept gaining territory. He was getting more and more and more and more. He was fighting. He was fighting Saxons in the north. These are all ethnic groups. He was fighting Avars and Slavs, not slaves, Slavs in the east. He was fighting Lombards in Italy. And he was fighting the Umayyad Muslims in Spain. But he was making alliances with other Muslims. Have to take a little sidebar. At this time that we're talking about, the years between like 750 and 800. Oh, what did I do? Didn't mean to do that. Between the years like 700 and 800. So once again, Muslims had come all the way up here into Spain. But then different kinds of Muslims started coming. Different Muslims started coming up into Spain. And then different Muslims, and they didn't get along with each other. So he got along with some of them, didn't get along with others, and the ones that he really, really did not get along with and was seriously fighting with were the Umayyad. Oh, that's supposed to be a D. Umayyad Muslims. Okay. By the time 800 came along, he had unified almost all of what had been long before the Western Roman Empire. So it's been Western Roman Empire fell in 476 CE. And now we're talking about the year 800 CE. So we're talking more than 300 years had passed. But he had now reunified almost everything that used to be the western part of the Roman Empire. He really, really valued education. I hope you remember that I told you that when the Western Roman Empire fell, I mean, all of society just fell apart, and school just really wasn't a thing anymore. Well, Charlemagne really valued education, and he encouraged all of his lands to build schools and to educate their children. He was also a very devout Christian. Charlemagne was a very, very devout Christian, and he wanted to spread Christianity all through Europe. He worked closely with the Catholic Church to spread, because here, this is, at the time, this was the center of the Roman Catholic Church, and he helped it spread all over Europe, all the way up into here, all the way up into here. He was helping to spread Christianity. Then at that time, there was, all of this is happening around the same time, a little bit before the year 800 to the year 800. The Catholic Pope, the Christian Pope at the time, named Leo the Third. The Pope is capitalized. Christian Pope Leo the Third is in, some people kidnap him because they don't believe that he should be the Pope. They, you know, there's a certain way for who gets to be the next Pope. And these people didn't believe that he should be the Pope. And so they kidnapped him and they were going to kill him, but he escaped and he ran to Charlemagne, and Charlemagne protected him. Well, to repay him for that, the Pope on Christmas Day, 800 CE, the Pope crowned Charlemagne emperor of the new Holy Roman Empire. What? Okay, so you must always, for as long as you live, remember that the Roman Empire and the Holy Roman Empire are completely different things. They are not the same thing. We just learned about the Roman Empire for 2 entire units. The Roman Empire collapsed over 300 years ago. Now, Charlemagne has conquered almost everything that used to be part of the Western Roman Empire. And the Pope has crowned him emperor of all of that land. And they are calling that land the new Holy Roman Empire. Holy Roman Empire. It's so important. If you can learn right now at your age that the Roman Empire and the Holy Roman Empire are completely different things, it will help you, it will save you so much headache in the future in your life. So now, Pope Leo III has placed a crown on Charlemagne's head and named him Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. That was on Christmas Day, year 800. That's important to remember. Ever since Constantine, Emperor Constantine, that Constantine, the Constantine we talked about before, ever since Constantine had become a Christian and ended Christian persecution and was spreading Christianity everywhere and was such a big fan of Christianity, ever since then, the emperor has had great control over the Christian church. But now that the Pope says that he can name, now that the Pope says he can name an emperor, that power dynamic is switching. Now, instead of the emperor having control over the church, now the church has control over the emperor. And the Eastern Roman Empire was furious about this. They were so mad because in the East, you know, they were still the Roman Empire. People in the East called themselves Romans. They didn't call themselves Byzantines. They didn't call themselves anything else. They called themselves Romans. They were the Roman Empire. And now they were the Roman Empire, and they had control over the church. Well, now the church has gone and done their own thing and named an emperor of the West. And there were, at this time, it was bad. So let's draw my map. We're going to have to go back to the Roman Empire. While there was the Roman Empire, there was just Christian church. Christian meant Christian. Everybody was the same. There was the Christian church. Then, when there was this split, and the eastern part, once again, they stayed really strong for almost 1,000 years. And this side fell apart and collapsed. Well, over many years, the church itself kind of started to change. People that called themselves Christians over here, which really were this side, they stuck to the original, what Christianity was from the beginning was here. But these Christians over here started changing a little bit. You know, with time and distance, it just happens. Religions change a little bit. And when the Pope, there was just the Pope, when the Pope, the Christian leader of the Christian church, the Pope, that the church had power over, when he named an emperor, a new emperor for this side, oh boy, these people got really angry. They were mad because they realized our government no longer has control over the church. Now the church has control over us. In the year 814 CE, Charlemagne dies. Charlemagne had 3 sons, and these 3 sons could not agree over who was going to be the new emperor. They bickered and fought with each other, and it got really, really fierce. And so they ended up signing the Treaty of Verdun. And the Treaty of Verdun split Charlemagne's entire kingdom into 3 parts. One son led one part, one son led another part, and one son led the other part because they couldn't agree. Charlemagne does have a great legacy. Charlemagne's legacy. He spread Christianity all throughout Europe. If you are Christian today, you can, well, if your ancestors are from Western Europe and you are Christian today, you can thank Charlemagne for that. It was Charlemagne that spread Christianity all throughout Western Europe. He also contributed. I have such a hard time with writing and speaking at the same time. He contributed to combining Germanic, Roman, and Christian cultures. So we have this kind of blend of, there used to be just like Greco-Roman. We've talked about this. Greco-Roman. There was Greek culture and there was Roman culture, but they blended and they became so close that you can't necessarily tell, well, I don't know if this is Greek or this is Roman. And so we call that Greco-Roman. Well, Charlemagne helped to combine Germanic culture and Roman culture and just general Christian culture all together to make a new kind of Western European culture. And he went down in history as being known as an incredible leader. Charlemagne is now and will always be known as an amazing, powerful leader. And for years and years and years, European kings looked to Charlemagne for learning how to be a good leader. They would say, well, how did Charlemagne do it? That's how I want to do it. How did Charlemagne handle this problem? That's how I want to do it. And it made for some strong leaders of kingdoms and strengthened kingdoms because people based their policies on how would Charlemagne do it? Okay, we're all done.